Go ahead, darlin'. Knock yourself out. Can't make it worse, can you? The CEO's mocking laughter echoed through the barn as he dared the simple farmhand to fix what his elite engineers couldn't. What Clint Radner didn't know was that Emma Ray Carson wasn't just any woman from a small Oklahoma town. She was the widow of Will Carson, the true genius whose revolutionary engine design had been stolen by Stratton Auto 12 years ago. As she pulled out a worn journal filled with familiar diagrams, the engineers' faces drained of color. When she replaced a single chip and the engine roared to life, the truth became undeniable. Now, with a tape recorder in her pocket capturing everything, Emma Ray was about to expose a corporate conspiracy that led to her husband's mysterious death. And for Clint Radner, underestimating this simple woman would be the biggest mistake of his life. Will justice finally come to this small Oklahoma town? If you're inspired by stories of everyday heroes fighting for justice, hit subscribe now. I share powerful untold stories like Emma Ray's every week. Don't miss what happens next. Subscribe and turn on notifications to join our community. The old barn stood big against the blue Oklahoma sky. Its wooden sides were weathered, silver gray like an old man's hair. Inside, though, it was a different world. Bright lights hung down, shining on a new, shiny engine. This engine was the reason men in fancy suits had come all the way from the city. They worked for Stratton Auto, a big company. They were building a new plant here, where land was cheaper and folks needed jobs. Today was a special day. They were showing off their amazing new engine to important people from the town and some of their own bosses. Clint Radner, the CEO, was a man who liked to be the boss. He was tall, with slick back hair that looked like it never moved. He stood with his arms crossed, a small smile on his face. He talked loud, telling everyone how this engine would change everything. But then something went wrong. An engineer, a young man named Billy, tried to start the engine. It coughed. It sputtered. Then nothing. Just silence. Billy's face turned red. The other engineers started to look worried. They fiddled with wires. They checked gauges. The engine stayed quiet as a stone. Mr. Radner's smile got tight. He didn't like when things didn't go his way. He looked around the barn at the local folks standing there. His eyes landed on a woman near the back. She was holding a simple woven basket. This was Emma Ray Carson. She had just come to bring lunch to Billy, her nephew. Billy was just starting out, trying to learn about machines like his uncle Will used to know. Emma Ray was a farmhand. Her hands were strong from work, her face kind. She wore simple clothes, nothing like the city folks. Mr. Radner let out a short laugh. It wasn't a kind laugh. "Well, folks," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Looks like our high-tech marvel needs a little local know-how." He pointed a shiny shoed foot towards Emma Ray. "Heck, maybe she wants to take a shot at it? What do you say, ma'am? Think you can figure out what all these expensive degrees couldn't?" A few of the city people chuckled. Some of the local engineers looked down at their shoes, embarrassed. Billy looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him. Emma Ray just stood there for a moment, her gaze steady on Mr. Radner. She didn't look angry. She didn't look scared. She looked like she was thinking, calm and quiet. Then she shifted the basket in her arms. She took a step forward. And then another. The barn got very quiet. Even the birds outside seemed to stop singing. Emma Ray walked right up to the silent engine. She looked at Mr. Radner, her eyes clear. "You sure about that, mister?" she asked, her voice soft but firm, like the earth after a spring rain. "You really want me to try?" Clint Radner just smirked, thinking it was all a big joke. He waved a hand like he was letting a child play with a toy. "Go right ahead, darlin'," he said. "Knock yourself out. Can't make it any worse, can you?" The engineers in their neat company shirts looked at each other. Some rolled their eyes. They expected this woman, this farmhand, to poke it a bit and then give up, confused. They thought she'd be another funny story to tell back in the city. They didn't know Emma Ray Carson. They didn't know about her late husband, Will, or the way she'd learned to listen to machines, just like he did. Emma Ray set her lunch basket down gently on a wooden crate. Then she reached for the worn leather bag she always carried. It was old, softened with age and use, its buckles dull. From inside, she pulled out a small, grease-covered journal. Its pages were filled with neat handwriting and careful drawings, diagrams of gears and wires. She opened it to a specific page. As she did, a couple of the younger, local engineers who stood closer craned their necks. Their eyes widened a little. The diagrams on Emma Ray's faded page looked a lot like the company's own secret blueprints for this very engine. blueprints that were supposed to be top secret locked away. They exchanged nervous glances. How could this woman have something like that? Emma Ray didn't seem to notice their surprise. She hummed a little tune, a song we'll use to whistle in his workshop. She ran a finger over a drawing in her journal. Then she reached into her bag again. This time, she pulled out a tiny metal chip, no bigger than her thumbnail. It wasn't a shiny new part from a factory. It looked like something she might have made herself or salvaged. She carefully leaned into the engine's open panel. The city engineers watched, some with open disbelief, others with a strange new interest. She didn't use any fancy tools, just her steady hands. She muttered something soft, almost to herself. Something about a grounding fault, and old will always said to check the simple things first. With a small click, she replaced the chip that was already in the engine with the one she brought. Then she stepped back. She looked at Billy, her nephew, and gave him a small, reassuring nod. Billy swallowed hard, his eyes wide. Emma Ray reached out a hand, her fingers dusty from the journal, and pressed the ignition button. There was a spark. A whir. And then the engine roared to life. It wasn't a cough or a sputter this time. It was a strong, steady hum, powerful and smooth. The barn floor vibrated beneath their feet. The room, which had been filled with whispers and nervous coughs, fell completely silent. All you could hear was the perfect, powerful sound of the running engine. The only sound in the converted barn was the smooth, powerful thrum of the engine. It purred like a giant, contented cat. Everyone just stared. The engineers from the city, the local workers, even Clint Radner. They all looked at Emma Ray Carson with wide eyes. The smirk was gone from Radner's face. Now he just looked confused, like he'd seen a ghost. A long moment passed. Then, one of the head engineers from Stratton Auto, a man named Leonard who usually had all the answers, finally spoke. His voice was a little shaky. "Ma'am," he started, "those diagrams in your book, and that chip, where did you get that design?" That's our proprietary technology." He sounded like he was accusing her, but also like he was genuinely baffled. Emma Ray closed her grease-stained journal. She didn't look flustered. She didn't look guilty. She looked at Leonard, then her gaze swept over the other engineers, the ones who were from around here, the ones who might remember. "I didn't steal it, sir," she said, her voice clear and steady, easily heard over the engine's hum. "My husband drew it. He designed this. About 12 years ago." She held up her journal, open to a page with a detailed drawing. At the bottom, clear as day, was a signature, Will Carson, and a date from over a decade past. "This here is Will Carson's work." A murmur went through the local people in the crowd. Will Carson? That name was known here. He was a mechanic, sure, but more than that. He was a man who understood machines, who could make anything run. A machine whisperer, they used to call him. Some of the older local engineers shifted their feet. They remembered Will. They remembered his little workshop on the edge of town. Clint Radner finally found his voice. "That's impossible," he blustered, trying to get his confidence back. "This is cutting-edge technology, developed by our best minds over the last 5 years. There's no way some local mechanic came up with it." He waved his hand dismissively, but his eyes kept darting to the journal, then to the smoothly running engine, then back to Emma Ray's calm face. The evidence was right there, humming away, proving him wrong. Emma Ray just looked at him. "It's the truth," she said simply. "And I can prove it." She had more than just the journal. She had boxes of Will's notebooks, sketches, even old letters. The engine kept running, a steady beat in the suddenly tense barn. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? About all the bright ideas born in small towns, just like yours, wherever you're watching from. Ideas waiting for their chance, sometimes for a long, long time. Ideas that belong to good people, people who just want to make things better. The air in the barn was thick with unasked questions. The engine still ran, a constant reminder of what Emma Ray had just claimed. Clint Radner looked like he wanted to argue, but for once he seemed at a loss for words. Emma Ray began to speak, her voice quiet but carrying a weight that made everyone listen. She wasn't giving a speech, it was more like she was sharing a story, a painful memory, with folks who needed to hear it. "My Will," she began, her eyes looking at something far away. "He loved machines. He understood them. He spent years in his little workshop, tinkering, dreaming. This engine, or something very close to it, was his biggest dream." She told them how Will had drawn up his plans, filled notebooks with his ideas. He believed his design could make engines cleaner, more powerful. He wasn't a man with fancy degrees or rich friends, Emma Ray continued, her voice soft but firm. He was just a good mechanic with a brilliant mind. He wanted to make a difference. She explained how Will, full of hope, had bundled up his best drawings and notes. He sent them off to a big city firm, a company that said they helped inventors. He was hoping for investment, a chance to build his prototype, to see his dream come alive. He told Emma Ray it was a long shot, but his eyes had shone with excitement. Weeks went by. They heard nothing. Then one night, tragedy struck. There was a fire, Emma Ray said, her voice barely a whisper now. The memory was still raw, even after all these years. A fire at Will's workshop. They said it was an accident. Faulty wiring, they said. Her gaze hardened. Will, he was inside. He died in that fire. A wave of sympathy went through the local people in the barn. Many of them remembered that night, the smoke, the sirens. They remembered the sadness. A few months after Will was gone, Emma Ray went on, her voice regaining its strength. I started seeing news about a new engine. A breakthrough from a big company called Stratton Auto. Their design, it looked so familiar. She paused, letting her words sink in. They said their brilliant engineers had come up with it. They got patents. They made billions. But I knew it was Will's work. The very same designs he'd sent off, hoping for a little help. She looked directly at Clint Radner, then at his engineers. He was buried, but his work wasn't. You can bury a man, but you can't always bury the truth with him. It has a way of coming out sooner or later. The barn was silent, save for the steady hum of Will Carson's engine. The story of Will Carson hung heavy in the air. The local folks looked at Emma Ray with a new understanding, a deep sympathy. Some of the older faces in the crowd nodded slowly. They remembered Will. They remembered his passion. They also remembered the whispers back then, the feeling that something wasn't quite right about that fire, about how quickly his ideas seemed to pop up somewhere else. The city engineers from Stratton Auto looked uncomfortable. They exchanged uneasy glances. Clint Radner, however, was starting to recover his usual bluster. That's a very sad story, ma'am, he said, his voice smooth and a little too polite. But it doesn't prove anything. Coincidences happen. Great minds can think alike. He was trying to dismiss her, to make her story sound like a fanciful tale of grief. But then something unexpected happened. One of the mid-level engineers, a local man named Dale, husband to Donna who worked at the town diner, cleared his throat. He looked pale. Mr. Radner, he started, his voice nervous but determined. Sir, some of us, we suspected. All eyes turned to him. When the full blueprints for this new plant engine came down from corporate, some of the older guys who knew Will, we saw things. Design elements. Little details. They looked like Will's style. We talked about it. Quietly. We saw the early patent filings, how the names on them changed over time. We didn't say anything. We were afraid for our jobs. He looked at Emma Ray with apology in his eyes. We're sorry, Emma. We should have spoken up. Another local engineer, an older woman named Sarah who had been friends with Will's mother, nodded in agreement. He's right. We knew it felt wrong. The cracks were appearing in Stratton Auto's wall of denial. Clint Radner's face was turning a dangerous shade of red. He opened his mouth to shout, to deny, to threaten. But before he could, Emma Ray spoke again, her voice still calm, but with an edge of steel now. I didn't come here today looking to start trouble, Mr. Radner, she said, holding his furious gaze. I just came to bring my nephew his lunch. But when you dared me, when you laughed. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small, old-fashioned tape recorder, the kind with actual little cassette tapes. I figured it might be wise to have a record of this conversation. She pressed a button, and out came Radner's voice, loud and clear, mocking her, daring her. Heck, maybe she wants to take a shot at it? What do you say, ma'am? Then his condescending laugh filled the barn. The color drained from Radner's face. He looked like he'd been punched. Emma Ray switched off the recorder. My Will was a good man, she said. A brilliant man. He deserved better than to have his life's work stolen and his memory disrespected. I won't let you steal what's his anymore. Not his engine. Not his name. Clint Radner stood there, speechless for once. The sound of his own mocking voice still echoed in the barn. Emma Ray's quiet dignity in the little tape recorder had done more damage than any shouting match could have. Billy, her nephew, who had been watching with a mix of fear and awe, quickly used his phone. He didn't record Radner. He recorded Emma Ray standing tall and the local engineer speaking up. He recorded the beautiful sound of Will Carson's engine running perfectly. Then he sent that short video to a friend who sent it to another. Like a spark catching on dry grass, the story spread. By that evening, the video was all over the internet. CEO dares simple woman to fix engine. She built it. The headlines were catchy. People loved an underdog story. They loved seeing arrogance get its comeuppance. The town, a small dot on the map of Oklahoma, suddenly found itself in the spotlight. They rallied around Emma Ray Carson. She wasn't just a farmhand anymore. She was their hero, the woman who stood up to a giant corporation. The next morning, the main street, usually quiet, was buzzing. News vans with big satellite dishes on top were parked outside the diner. Reporters with microphones and cameras were everywhere, asking questions, wanting to hear Emma Ray's story, wanting to know about Will Carson, the forgotten genius. The old barn at the Stratton Auto Plant site was no longer a place for secret demos. It was now surrounded by yellow police tape. Federal agents had arrived early that morning. They weren't interested in the engine demonstration anymore. They had warrants. They had questions about patent fraud, about stolen intellectual property, about corporate espionage. They had seen the video. They had heard the whispers that had been around for years, whispers that Emma Ray's courage had finally turned into shouts. The local engineers who had spoken up were now giving official statements, their guilt eased by finally telling the truth. Later that day, Clint Radner was seen leaving the plant. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't giving orders. He was in handcuffs, his expensive suit rumpled. Two serious-looking agents walked him to an unmarked car. The news spread fast. He wasn't just being arrested for stealing Will's designs. The investigation had quickly uncovered more, a cover-up that went deep, financial fraud to hide the theft, and maybe, just maybe, questions about a certain workshop fire 12 years ago. The fall of Clint Radner was swift and hard. He had laughed at a simple woman in a barn. Now the whole world was watching him being taken away, his empire built on lies starting to crumble. Emma Ray watched the news on a small TV at the diner, surrounded by supportive neighbors. She didn't look triumphant. She just looked tired, but with a flicker of peace in her eyes. Justice, it seemed, had finally found its way to their small town. The storm of news crews and federal agents eventually moved on from the small Oklahoma town. Life began to return to its usual quiet rhythm, but something had changed. The air felt clearer, lighter. Emma Ray Carson found herself sitting on her porch swing one evening, watching the fireflies begin to dance in the twilight. The old farmhouse felt a little less empty these days. Will's memory felt more alive, more honored than it had in years. Her nephew Billy had brought over the mail. Among the usual bills and farm supply catalogs, there was a thick envelope with an official-looking seal. She opened it slowly. Inside was a letter. It was from a government agency in Washington, D.C. The words on the page were formal, but their meaning was clear and astonishing. The federal investigation into Stratton Auto had uncovered the full extent of the theft of Will Carson's work. As part of the settlement, and to honor his innovative spirit, a new federal grant program was being established. It would be called the Will Carson Innovation Fund. Its purpose was to provide money and support to rural inventors, people like Will, people with brilliant ideas but without the big city connections or resources. People from small towns all across the country. The letter went on to say that they had heard about Emma Ray, about her quiet strength, her deep understanding of her husband's work, and her unwavering fight for his legacy. Then came the part that made Emma Ray put the letter down and take a deep breath. They were asking her, Emma Ray Carson, a widowed farmhand, to be on the board that would oversee the grant program. They wanted her to help choose who received the funds. They wanted her wisdom, her connection to the very people the program aimed to help. She sat there for a long time, just looking out at the darkening fields where Will had once walked and dreamed. She thought about all the other Wills out there, tinkering in barns and garages, their genius unseen, unheard. She thought about how Will would have loved this, not for the fame, but for the chance to help others. Billy, who had been waiting patiently, asked, "Well, and Emma? What does it say?" Emma Ray picked up the letter again. A small smile touched her lips. She thought about Clint Radner's mocking laugh. She thought about how it felt to be dismissed, to be made to feel small. "It says," she told Billy, her voice steady and sure, "that they want me to help make sure the next Will Carson gets a fair chance. And if it helps the next girl with a good idea not get laughed out of the room, or the next small-town dreamer get a listen, well then, I reckon I'm in." She knew Will would be proud. His work would live on, not just in one engine, but in the dreams of countless others. His legacy was finally truly restored. Autumn settled over the Oklahoma plains, painting the trees in shades of red and gold. The town decided to hold its annual harvest fair, but this year it felt different, more hopeful. As dusk began to settle, casting long shadows across the fairgrounds, Emma Ray Carson stood on a small, makeshift stage. She wasn't holding blueprints or facing down CEOs tonight. In her hands was her old fiddle, Will's favorite. He had loved music, said it was like the rhythm of a well-tuned engine. She tucked the fiddle under her chin and began to play. A sweet, simple tune drifted out over the crowd. It was a song of the land, a song of quiet strength, a song of remembrance. The children, their faces sticky with cotton candy, stopped their running and watched, silent and captivated by the music. Their parents stood listening, a sense of peace settling over them. This was their town, their community, and they had faced a storm together and come out stronger. Over by the old converted barn, now quiet and empty of Stratton Auto's machines, a new banner was being raised in the fading light. It was simple, hand-painted by local artists. It read, "The Carson Innovation Center." The town council had decided to repurpose the building to make it a place where local folks could learn, invent, and share ideas, funded in part by the new grant program. Beside the banner on the wide wooden wall of the barn, a local artist was just putting the finishing touches on a beautiful mural. It showed a pair of strong, grease-stained mechanic's hands, much like Will's, gently passing a wrench to the smaller hands of a young girl, her eyes bright with curiosity and determination. A symbol of legacy passed on, of hope for the future. Emma Ray finished her song. For a moment there was silence, then warm applause spread through the crowd. She smiled, a genuine heartfelt smile. She didn't just fix the engine. She rebuilt a name, a legacy, and a voice that had been taken away. And this time they were going to listen.